Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside the Great Lakes Honda City studios. Great Lakes Honda City coming to you on 7140 Henry Clay Boulevard in Liverpool, New York. They are open for sales and service Monday through Saturday. You can get a sneak peek of all their inventory by going to GreatLakesHondaCity.com, the only place that I've trusted for my vehicles for over a decade. I am here picture in picture with one of my favorite people that I've met in the sports world. There's been over 5,000 guests on the show. If it was 5, if it was 5,000, or it was 10,000, that guy would still be one of my favorites. That's Brian Newberry, and he rocks the beard better than most. I respect the beard. So Brian Newberry here with us today, Navy Midshipmen Head Football Coach. We're inside the 2025-26 postseason, and we'll also talk about things within the season as well and the greater message of the Navy Midshipmen. So it is a little bit past Christmas, but I'm going to say it anyways, because the spirit lives on, and we know God is good all the time. So Merry Christmas, Brian, and welcome to the show.
Merry Christmas. Absolutely right about that. Glad to be here with you, man.
Yeah, happy to be here with you. It's so weird to think that you and I were around each other, a few months ago in Charlotte, and now we're in the postseason. Like, does it feel like that to a coach, that you snap your fingers and it goes from preseason to week 2 to here we are in a bowl game?
Yeah, it's different every year, interestingly enough. I mean, sometimes it goes by in a blink of an eye. Sometimes parts of your seasons go by really quick. You look up and you're in game 6. You're like, how did we get here so fast? And there's certain parts of the season that seem to be in real time, if that makes sense. But it's always a little bit different. But yeah, it does generally fly by pretty quick. Like you said, just at Charlotte, you felt like just the other day with the anticipation, the season coming up, the excitement of that, not knowing what it's going to look like exactly. And then you're here to this point, and be able to look in the rearview mirror and see how things kind of played out. And it's always interesting to look back.
Yeah, no, it's definitely unique, because I'm like, oh, okay, the season's coming on. I can't believe it's here. And then it's like, here we are. It's almost January. But there's a lot of things to discuss this season. One of the things that's on my mind is you're within the American Conference, and with Navy being within the American, you have now, there's been 2 representatives from the American to make it to the college football playoff. The team that you're going to be playing in a bowl game, Cincinnati, they did it first when there was a 4-team playoff, and they had defeated Notre Dame head-to-head, which helped them to get in essentially. And then this time around, Tulane is the champion of the American. The 5 highest-ranked champions got in. So I know it's not Navy that we're talking about in this moment, and hopefully we will be down the road, but to see 2 representatives in the college football playoff from the conference that you're in, what does it say about the American?
Well, it certainly speaks to the strength of the American. And it's, as you know, Dan, it's a super talented league, not just with players, but with coaches as well, as we all saw with all the coaches out of our league, moving up power forward jobs. And so, yeah, it's a really talented league. It's a really good league. It's a diverse league. I think that having the 2 academies in there makes it really interesting. And, a third team runs a form of the option with Rice. You've got teams that throw it all over the place. And so it's a fun league to compete in and to coach in. There's no doubt about that. And I think, this league is always deserving to have that group of 5 spot, in the playoff. Because it's a tough league, week to week, and yeah, it's one of those leagues where anything can happen on any given Saturday. There's not a team at the top that just completely dominates. 1 or 2 teams that dominate everything, and it changes year to year. Yeah. Obviously, with the transfer portal, new coaches coming in, those kind of things, it's going to look entirely different year to year. But I think it will continue to be a really, really strong league.
And you brought it up. I mean, the fact that this league is constantly changing, and this is one of my biggest arguments for the power of the American, when they talk about here's the power conferences and American's not a part of that. And I say, okay, well, then why do those 4 conferences and Notre Dame take from the student athletes in the American, go after them, go after the coaches? Sometimes an entire conference in the quote-unquote power goes after an institution like Cincinnati, like UCF, like Houston. So, I mean, to that argument, Brian, just what your thoughts are. I mean, every single year, it seems like either every year or every other year, coaches are being poached by the SEC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, the ACC, student athletes being poached, sometimes institutions being poached. We heard about the Memphises and the Tulanes potentially being asked to join whatever the new pack was going to be and whatnot. So doesn't that speak to the validity and the strength and the depth of the American, that the quote-unquote power of college football keeps trying to get better by taking American student athletes, coaches, and institutions?
Yeah, I'm 100%. There's really good schools in our league and really good geographical locations that get really good support. A lot of teams in our league are able to pay players pretty well too. So the challenging part, like you said, is holding on to the talent in your programs, and that's for all of us. The academy is included in that, and they've been able to hold on to coaches. And like for us, I think the continuity that we've had here. Didn't lose a single player in the portal a year ago that played a snap for us. Was able to retain our entire coaching staff and support staff. So that's rare, and that's something that's really important to me to have that continuity with our players and with our staff. And I think that's paid dividends for us last 2 years. And I know the Naval Academy is different. These young men come here for a little different reason. It's a life decision, not a 4-year decision. Yeah. So I think that places us uniquely in this conference, and the same thing for Army. But yeah, I agree with you 100%, Dan. It speaks to the talent in this league, the players and the coaches, and there's several teams in this league that would like to move up. And they're always in those discussions. The Memphises of the world, the South Floridas, the Tulanes, for example, and I think that's a credit to the league and the talent in the league.
Yeah, so I mean, when you're in a league that could constantly be changing, is constantly changing. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously that challenges you as a coach, right? To hear, okay, maybe this institution's leaving, maybe this one's coming in. I mean, the irony of you playing a bowl game against Cincinnati when Cincinnati was within the American just a few years ago. So it's, for a coach, I would imagine, and granted, you could have the same institution and coaches come in and out of it. The SEC sometimes changes coaches like underpants. Every couple 2-3 years we'll see a coach change at an institution in the SEC. But for you, the challenge that brings you to say, okay, this roster that we played last year now turned over 40 players. The coach is new. I mean, what can you say to that effect on what it does for you as a coach? Because when you're in a conference, you get to know your opponents, you get to know what they're about, what the coach's tendencies are, what the student athletes are doing. But in the world we live in today, there's so much change that it almost feels like stepping into a new job every year.
Yeah, no, there's some truth in that. You certainly feel like you're playing some of these teams for the first time, even though you've played them. I've played them every year that I've been here, because, like you said, the rosters turn over. You are familiar with certain players that are coming back, but it's not like they've got everybody back outside of their seniors. The coaching staff's intact. The scheme on both sides of the football is similar, where you can go back and look at your previous years, kind of notes and game plan, the history of the matchup. It's unique every year, especially early on in the year. Dan, we don't have much to watch on some of these teams, especially when there's a coaching change. It's a little bit of a challenge, but I think it's part of the fun as well. Trying to figure out ways to defend people and a new offensive or defensive system, and some different players that come in that may be really, really good players. And so it's always interesting. I think as the year goes on, you try to watch a little bit every week, and so you're familiar with these teams, but you have not really had an opportunity to dive into them really specifically until the week of or during a bye week or something like that. So it is unique. It's a challenge, but it's kind of keeps you on your toes a little bit and makes it a little bit more exciting, maybe.
Yeah, and I mean, for you, like you said, when you're a part of the Naval Academy or any of the military institutions, it's different, right? You're not offering NIL money, and there's a reason to go in there far beyond football. It is a lifetime decision, like you said, not a 4-year decision. So, I remember talking with Jeff Munkin, the Army football head coach, and a few years ago having this reality of like, hey, we don't have to worry about NIL and we don't have to worry about the portal. And then I saw people leaving military institutions through the transfer portal. And I saw people committing and then going back on that commitment. And I thought to myself, wait a second, because I have people in the military, family in the military. And so I said to one of my buddies, I was like, don't you agree that you have service, and once you go in, you have to have a certain number of years of service to the United States, whatever military that you choose to be in and whatnot. So it got really confusing to me, but we saw it happen last year that you went up against a running back in the Army-Navy game, and after the game, he went in the transfer portal, and it just totally threw me off. So what can you say to that effect? I mean, obviously there's some type of a window for this, but it seemed like something that wasn't going to happen due to the commitment you make to the military being different than a commitment you make to play football. So how does this all kind of work into it, Brian? And is it any concern to you that the impossible kind of seemed to happen?
Yeah, there's certainly a concern. And, early on, I didn't really know how it was going to, affect us. The thing that's unique about the academies is that, after your sophomore year, and we've talked about this before, Dan, but you sign, going into your junior year, right, you sign what they call 2 for 7. So it's 2 more years at the academy than your 5 years of service afterwards. And so you're technically contracted at that point. To get out of that agreement, right, there's a financial penalty, a pretty significant penalty that you have to pay. Now, some schools will gladly pay that for a player. Case in point, and I don't know if Army's running back was I think he might have been a sophomore, but he was a junior. There was certainly something to pay back. But can't really speak to that particular case. But what you hope is that you're recruiting the right kind of guys in the process. And I think you and I talked about this a little bit. I think the transfer portal in certain ways is helping us. High school players aren't getting as many opportunities as they used to, and so there's a larger pool of recruits out there. It allows us to be a little more selective, about the guys that we're taking, from a physical profile and all those things, but also from, personality standpoint. Are they a fit at our place? Or are they coming to the Naval Academy for the right reason? And that's not to say that everybody comes here, that everybody grew up wanting to serve their country, or have military history, in their family. Grew up wanting to be a Navy SEAL or a pilot, because that's certainly not the case when we start recruiting these guys. But we're really transparent through the whole process. We want to know exactly what they're getting themselves into and what the commitment looks like, because we want guys that want to be there, that understand the responsibility, understand what happens after they get done here, and all those kind of things. And I think we're recruiting the right kind of guys. And then you also want to make your program a place that they want to be, not have to be. And so I think you got to be smart about the way that you do things. And I think we treat our players the right way here. I want the football piece of things to be the best part of their day. They come over to our building. And that's not to say that we don't coach them hard and that we don't do hard things. But I want them to enjoy it. I want them to enjoy each other. And this place is unique. The brotherhood is real here. The bond that's created here is different because of what these guys go through together. And I think that makes it hard to leave this place once you get here. I think at that point, when you're going into your junior year, you've invested a lot in this place. You've invested a lot in this program. You start to see the light at the end of the tunnel as far as a degree, and you understand what a degree from the Naval Academy can do for you. You start to have that desire to want to serve your country as well. And so I think that's one reason why we've been able to retain our players. And so, it's always a concern, and it's not to say that it won't affect us at some point. I'm sure it probably will. But we've been relatively protected from it, in the last couple of years. And I think having success in your program has a lot to do with that as well. But we're in a good place, and I think, recruits and families are starting to see the value in a program like the Naval Academy. It's different. This is a developmental program. The guys you come in with, the guys you're going to graduate, the guys you may serve with, the guys that are going to be probably some of your best friends for the rest of your life, and there's value in that. And so we try to sell that in the process. And while we can't pay them while they're here, obviously, The NIL here comes on the back end of getting a degree from a world-class institution, one of the best leadership schools in the world. Having served your country, that makes you unique. That makes you stand out, in the civilian world when you get done with your service, whether you get out in 5 years or whether you stay in for 15 or 20. And so, yeah, it's a special place, and the bond here is special. It's different. And hopefully we'll continue to keep it that way and be relatively protected from, the transfer portal. Because obviously, Dan, we can't replace players when we lose them because we don't go into the transfer portal and pull guys out. We can't really do that here. If we were able to do that, you'd have to start over, as a true freshman, go through plebe summer and do all those things. And so it's probably not real inviting to a lot of guys who've already played a couple years in college. So we don't really explore that unless something falls into our lap. And maybe it's a guy that we recruited. He goes off his freshman year and is not real happy and realizes he made a mistake not coming to the Naval Academy, and maybe he wants to come back. And we would look into that potentially, but it's rare for sure.
Yeah, and there is that delicate dance, right? When they get a phone call from, a Syracuse or a Florida or a Texas or UNLV, and then they get a phone call from Navy, there's that other element of it. And you talked about being very honest with them about what they're being asked to do and whatnot. When you're on the recruiting trail and you're having that conversation of, yes, we're a school that would like to recruit you, we'd like to offer you, we'd like to give you an opportunity, but there's this other element to it. I mean, you're looking for a special type of person. You're looking for someone who is selfless, who believes in service, who, typically has a faith, has a commitment to and a care for their country. There's so much more than football. So obviously you know how to do this. You've done it as a coordinator. You've done it as a head coach. You've had a lot of success in doing it throughout the years, and we've seen everything you've been able to do at the Naval Academy. So when you sit down or your staff sits down with a student athlete and their families, how do you have that conversation of, yes, you have 75 offers, you have 20 offers, you have 40 offers. This one is unique, it's special, and we're not only asking you to commit to football, we're asking you to commit a deeper connection to your country. How do you have that conversation?
Yeah, well, I think some of the things I mentioned, just a second ago, but I think it's hard when you're 17, 18 years old to really look far down the road. What your future's going to look like, what it's going to look like when you're 30 or 40. So you try to paint that picture a little bit. It's not about, the next 4 years as much as it is about the next 40 or 50 years, and your ability to set yourself up for success in the future. And, this place we say it's a golden ticket, all the time. Mm-hmm. The degree that you get, the opportunity to serve your country, to play FBS football at the highest level, to play Notre Dame every year, to play in one of the best conferences in the country, to have a chance to get in the college football playoff, and to be set up at the end of this thing for the rest of your life, it's a pretty easy sell, And I tell you, it's we're always honest with them. We're always transparent. It's going to be hard. It's different.
Yeah.
Right. But the path that's usually the most difficult is the one that's the most rewarding. And so we try to paint that picture for them and what that looks like, and who they will become in their time here and their time in their service, and what the future looks like. So you kind of have to paint that picture for them and paint that picture for the families, right? And I think moms are always the ones that have the most concern about their babies and what that looks like after they graduate here, what the service piece looks like. And so to give them some assurance, talk about the different options that they have in their service, I think softens them up a little bit. And obviously you sell the brotherhood. I mean, it is unique here. It's special. And a lot of that family's thrown around a lot in a lot of programs. The brotherhood's thrown around a lot of programs, but I've been coaching for a long time, and it's unique and it's different here because of this place and the difficult things that they do, the difficult things they do together, and the way they lean on each other, the way that they're vulnerable, with each other, and the struggles here and those kind of things. But it's certainly rewarding. And I think every year that you're here, you start to love this place even more. It's hard early on, right? You're a young man that goes to prep school and then comes here as a plebe, and it's challenging. but those challenges always pay off, in the long run. So, but those are the major selling points. We're sitting down talking to a young man, and pretty quickly, Dan, whether or not a young man's going to be a fit at your place. What's important to him, what's important to his family, and so then you can start to have conversations about, all right, well, these are things important to you, and this may be the place for you. And if they're not, then this place isn't for everybody. And I'm very, very honest about that as well in the process, because we want guys that want to be here. And the guys that are on the fence about it, maybe the guys that only had one FBS offer, and maybe that was us or Army or Air Force. Some guys just want to play Division I football, and that's not the right reason to come to the Naval Academy, just to be able to do that. That's not to say that we don't get some guys that, for that reason, and you hope that they can grow up and learn to value this place for exactly what it is. And we certainly take some chances sometimes, but the character piece, whether or not we think a young man can thrive here, whether or not he's got the character to do that is an important part of the recruiting process. And so, while we're being transparent with them, we're also vetting them and their ability to do things here and be successful at the Naval Academy.
So do you feel like, Brian, that you have to cast a bigger net because your job as a coach is to find talent, right? You're looking for talent at every position. You're tasking your staff to do that. And, obviously you have the final say, but there's that other piece to it of like, is this the right fit? Is this the right person here? So, I think that a common misconception is, well, the military academies take whoever's left. They're not going to get the top quarterback out of Texas, or they're not going to get the top running back out of, Kansas and whatnot, or the top corner from Florida. And I don't think that that's a fair assessment to make. You're obviously looking for the best talent in the country. You're also looking to see if they fit. So do you have to cast a bigger net to say, hey, we're going to have conversations with talented student athletes, and then we got to figure out which one of those talented student athletes is not only talented, but also wants to serve their country?
Yeah, we cast a really big net, Dan. We recruit all over the country, and obviously the film is the first step in the process. Finding guys that we think can play here that fit our system. All right, and then you start to dig deeper. You talk to coaches, you talk to teachers, counselors, all those kind of things, the families. And we take a lot of pride in how hard we work at recruiting and trying to find kids in some of the outlying areas, some of the under-recruited areas, maybe diamonds in the rough, guys that may be playing one position that we can kind of forecast maybe be able to play something else and be really good at that. Landon Robinson is a great example of a young man that we recruited as a linebacker, and thinking probably that he might not end up being a linebacker, but loved the young man. Had something about him, knew that he would be a great fit here at the academy, knew he'd be a great teammate, and was talented. Sometimes you recruit character as much as anything. Find really, really good players, right? Recruit character. Every once in a while you'll take a guy that's outside of the profile of what you may be looking for at a certain position, but has something special about him. And those usually end up working out really, really well. And so, we cast a broad net. And even if there wasn't the military service piece connected to it, we'd still have to cast a broad net to find young men that get into school here. Yeah. Academic admissibility is not an easy thing either. So it's a special find. And so we work hard at it, and we cast a really, really broad net to find the right guys.
Yeah, and you mentioned Landon Robinson on your defensive line. He represented you at the American kickoff, and I feel like his name has been in my email many times of like, he's up for this award, he could get that award, he was just been honored with this. So to speak to the man that is Landon Robinson, when I got to sit with him, I loved my time with him and Blake Horvath, and I felt very spoiled to sit, in between those two gentlemen and have a conversation. And I would just love to get your thoughts about what Landon has become, because that was a fun time for me in July. And then here we are through the season into the postseason, and his name just keeps popping. I'm seriously, like, I feel like every few days or every couple of weeks I look at my email and I'm like, Landon's up for what again? Like, he's got that too. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, I've said this a lot about him. He's a great football player, but he's an exceptional human being. And you knew that early on, as a freshman. And sometimes recruits come in and it's a process, and they grow up and they develop. They turn a corner at some point. For Landon, you always knew he was going to be successful here. Whether or not, did I foresee him being an All-American? No, I did not. Did I think he was going to be a good player for us? Absolutely. But early on, just his young man has always got a positive outlook, always a smile on his face.
Yeah.
Always the guy that ran to the work, embraced the hard things, was willing to do whatever he could do to help our football team be successful. Phenomenal teammate, great leader, guy that you want to be around. The list goes on and on about the young man, but he became the player that he is because of his work ethic and because of his attitude and the way he showed up. How he showed up on a consistent basis is really is a great example of how hard work pays off for him. But talk about an unselfish guy. He gets here and we move him to defensive end right away and didn't even flinch. He's like, okay, let's do it. And just embraced the work and did whatever we asked him to do and had a smile on his face the whole time. And I'm sure there were struggles for him when he was here, but you never really saw it. But you knew early on in the recruiting process, Coach Walker would tell you he recruited him and just loved the kid and knew that we needed to get him in the program and didn't know where he would end up playing. But you get guys in the program like that, they're talented, that are great human beings. It usually pays off. And it certainly did in his case.
And the other guy that was on the other side of me, Blake Horvath, your quarterback. I'm gonna see how my memory works here. I believe at the time we're talking, heading into the Liberty Bowl game against Cincinnati, 1,472 passing yards, 10 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 1,147 rushing yards, 15 rushing touchdowns. Blake Horvath has definitely shown his ability to be multiple, to do a lot of different things. I think people, if they didn't see it, saw it in the Army-Navy game last year, the leadership that he has. Then you beat Oklahoma, and we keep talking about that leadership. We go into this season, we say, was last season a fluke? No, it wasn't. He comes in, he does his thing, and more success here. Another Army-Navy game victory, another bowl game opportunity. I easily became a Blake Horvath fan, and then I got to sit with him and get to know him as a man a little bit better and spend some time, and I just feel like he's a rock star. So I'd love to get your thoughts on Blake.
He is 100%. He's an absolute rock star, and obviously a great fit for what we do offensively. The marriage between him and Coach Cronick, the direction we wanted to take the offense, probably couldn't have been a whole lot better. Exceptional young man. I think obviously you love it when you watch him play and you see how he carries himself, and then you have a chance like you did to sit down with him. And then you really understand how special he is. And not just as an athlete and the things he does on the football field, but his demeanor is different and unique. He's a natural leader. He's calm. He's cool. He's collected. And everybody leads in their own way. Everybody's got a different personality. But when you have a quarterback that has that kind of demeanor and that confidence, you have a quarterback that doesn't, his identity is not tied to who he is as a football player. It's about who he is as a person. He's a very well-rounded young man, articulate, well thought out, has interests outside of football, is patient with everybody he comes in contact with. My 4-year-old daughter has a big time crush on Blake Horvath. He always takes time to stop what he's doing and say hello to her, and he's like that with a lot of people.
Yeah.
He's just a special young man, and selfless, really, really good leader. Not a super vocal guy occasionally, but just the way he carries himself, I think is what makes him special. And I think that kind of permeates, through the rest of our team. And I think, the one quality that he has, I think is special is his ability to not attach himself to the outcome. And we talk about that a lot, but that's easier said than done. But he's a guy that, I think the Army game is a perfect example. Didn't play his best game. Maybe one of his worst games in 2 years as the starter. But the mistakes he made didn't affect the next play. And so you see him make a critical throw to Eli Heidenreich late in the game to put us up, make some great decisions. And so he's the guy that can never gets down on himself, able to go on to the next play, has that mentality. I think a lot of that has to do with, hey, he's not defined by his success on the football field, right? And just plays the next play, and that's kind of how he lives his life. And I think one of the things that makes him the most impressive, and that's, I think one of the things is maybe one of the hardest things to do as a young player is the ability to just flush the previous play and be in the moment.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes him a special player. There's no doubt about it.
Brian Newberry here with us on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside the Great Lakes Honda City Studios. The Navy Midshipmen Head Football Coach inside the 2025-26 postseason as we get ready for this bowl game at the time of conversation. We've gotten to talk about a lot of big picture as well as Naval Academy things specifically. And before I let you go, there's a few more things on my mind. You always generate a lot of different roads for me to go on, Brian, because I appreciate our conversation. So selfishly, I just try to come up with more things to talk about because I like talking with you. But I do want to look at the fact that, and I know you're going to give credit to other people, and I know you're going to be humble, but I have to say this. You've been the head coach of the Navy Midshipmen after being their defensive coordinator under Ken Niumatalolo. You've been the head coach for 3 seasons now, this being the third. The first season, we look at just shy of being at 500, at that 5-7 record. Then we see back-to-back, last year and this year, back-to-back 10-win seasons for the Naval Academy in football. We get to see back-to-back bowl games. We get to see back-to-back Army-Navy game victories for the Naval Academy and the Midshipmen. So I would love for you to tell me about this success because obviously built a really good friendship with Ken Niumatalolo. I've gotten to know him over the years. We saw them come in and kind of strike, quickly in the American. Then there was kind of peaks and valleys and whatnot. You're there as a coordinator. You step into the head coach role. I can't believe it's only been 3 seasons. It feels like it's been longer. But back-to-back Army-Navy victories, back-to-back 10-win seasons. I've been ringing that bell about what you have done with you and your staff and your student athletes. I'd love to get your thoughts on the state of Navy football.
Well, I think we're in a good place. My hope is that we set this thing up the right way, for sustained, long-term consistent success. I think we can do that here. I think the last 2 seasons are a result of, a lot of hard work from our players. You don't win 10 games in a year without really good players, and we have a lot of those.
Yeah.
And so the ability to continue to recruit at a really high level is extremely important here. The way that we develop our players, while they're here, while they're at the prep school before they get here, really important part of that. I think one of my first hires was Jim Carizzi to run our strength and conditioning program, and I think he deserves as much credit, as anybody in our program and the success that we've had. We look different. We're bigger. We're faster. We're stronger. But not just that piece of it from a culture standpoint. You guys spend as much time with the strength staff, more time than they do with the coaches. And he's been exceptional. And I think, as a head coach, you're only as good as your assistant coaches. And there's one thing that I've done a really good job of is hiring the right people. Guys that have the same values that I have, guys that got into coaching for the right reasons, guys that appreciate the Naval Academy for what it is, that love being here because of the relationships and the developmental piece. We've been able to do that, but the wins are a byproduct. We don't talk about winning a lot around here. We don't talk about the outcome. I think we're like a lot of coaches talk. We're a process-driven operation here, and our ability to do that, to show up every day with a really high standard, and do that on a consistent basis. I think if you do that the right way, your players buy into that. I think the byproduct of that is being able to get the best out of your team, right? And the goal here is always to be the best version of ourselves. And the challenge is to do that on a daily basis. And, Ryan Holiday talks about consistency being a superpower. And I believe that 100%. And so it's not something that happened overnight for sure. And it's probably happened a little quicker than I thought, but it's a credit to some really good players. Just to credit to, hiring Drew Cronick 2 years ago, who's done a phenomenal job with our offense. It's a credit to our coaches for the way that we recruited and the way we've developed our players and really built strong relationships with our players and fostered an environment here where these guys care about each other. They know each other. They love each other. So all those things, it's a combination of a lot of things kind of coming together. But at the end of the day, like I said, you got to have good players to win 10 games. And we've got a lot of good players, and we have a tremendous staff, tremendous support staff. And we're always trying to push the envelope and try to do things better than they've ever been done around here before. And we can't pay our players here, Dan, but we can provide world-class training facilities, world-class recovery facilities, sports medicine, all those things. So those are some of the things I'm trying to push the envelope on. And new athletic director Michael Kelly has been great. He sees the value in a lot of things that I see value in, and the way forward and what the future of Navy football looks like. But my vision for our program is to consistently be one of the top group of 5 teams in the country, every year, and have an opportunity to win this league, which is an excellent league. And if you do that, it gives you a chance to maybe get into the playoff. We'd love to be able to do that, for the Naval Academy, for our program. I think would be huge. But at the end of the day, it's everything we do is about, shining the spotlight on the academy, on these players, and who they are, and being able to tell their stories. And it's a special place. There's a lot of people out there, and Navy football is really, really important to. Folks, veterans, folks that are currently serving in the Navy and the Marine Corps, the brotherhood of guys that played here in the past. And so really important to me that those folks are proud of what, regardless of the wins and the losses, but they're proud of what they see and the way that we do things, the way our players carry themselves, how they play the game with the fight and the grit and the resilience, and the effort that we play with. All those things are really important. So, my hope is that we can set it up for long-term sustained success, that we're not, kind of all over the place, a 10 or 11 win year followed by a 5 or 6 win year. I want to be consistent with what we're doing. And there's going to be years where we're more talented than we are other years. There's going to be years where we get some breaks, more so than we do others. And at the end of the day, it's about being the best version of ourselves and my ability to maximize our football team. That's always the quest. And to become better human beings in the process, to have fun with what we're doing, but to invest and pay a price and all those things. And so much to learn from football, that relates to life, as you know, Dan. So, the responsibility for us here is, we're preparing them to go be leaders and serve in our military. And so that responsibility is really important to me, that they're as well prepared as they can be, and whatever lessons they can learn from a football program are lessons that they can carry on into their service, carry on into their lives, and hopefully make them better husbands and fathers and friends and so on. So it's about more than just football here, for sure. And that's the one thing that I love about this place and appreciate about it.
Yeah, we live in a world where now in collegiate athletics, nobody wants to wait. They want to be on the front line, or they don't want to be there. So when you talk about sustained success, consistency, how you do one thing is how you do everything. When you're trying to build this, you obviously have to have that next man up. You have to have someone behind a Landon Robinson. You have to have somebody behind a Blake Horvath, and so on and so forth. So just to that effect of recruiting the right people, working with your staff, and putting this together, just I know obviously the Naval Academy is unique, like you said, and you're looking for a certain type of person who's committed to getting their degree, to graduating, to serving, the 2+7, and everything that you have there, which you have as you have the 5 years after. So when you look at what's happening at the Naval Academy and how different it is, what can you say to the effect of being ready for the future? Because Blake will move on, Landon will move on. You're 53, guys that we're used to seeing, plus the rest of them that are on reserve, they're going to move forward. So just like the military, sometimes the reserves get called in. So how do you make sure those reserves are ready?
Yeah, it's a great question. One thing that's tough nowadays is we live in a world of instant gratification. And that's why you see guys, you go to 3 or 4 different schools. Um, I think it's important for our players to understand that the great thing about our game is it's delayed gratification. It's the combination of a lot of hard work, things done right when you get an opportunity, if you get the opportunity. And so you look at a guy like Blake Horvath and Landon Robinson, they're 2 great examples. Landon went to the prep school, right? Didn't play until he was a sophomore. Didn't play a ton as a sophomore. And then for the younger players to see him having success, and to hear him talk about the process for him and what that looked like. To hear Blake Horvath, who didn't play as a freshman, played a little bit as a sophomore, broke his hand, he comes in and has a huge junior year. It's important that our guys understand. We talk about it a lot. This is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. It's really hard to play here as a freshman, and I'm honest about that. When they come in. Every year we have a few freshmen play, but it's really hard to do that here. You're coming out of plebe summer, going right into fall camp. So there's challenges here, but I want our guys to embrace that, understand that they've got to invest, and the payoff at the end is significant. I think it's also important for your team to understand when you have a roster the size of ours is that everybody is important and everybody has a role. You may not like your role at the time. But you embrace it to the best of your ability. It's the only way to change it, right, and move into the next iteration of what that looks like. And that's the one thing that's great about our place is that it's a process. It takes time. It's developmental, and I think while our players, they want to play as a freshman, they want to play as a sophomore, but they understand that it doesn't happen overnight, and they understand there's a price to be paid, and I think that they appreciate that while they're here, and. Countless examples. You look at a guy like Adam Klenk, Dan, who played Raider for us. This is the first year he's played any snaps on defense and had a phenomenal year. You wish he had another year with him, but he was a young man that tore his ACL twice. Had a lot of things happen to him during his time here. But to see the smile on his face after the Army game, to understand that all the hard work that he put in was more than worth it. There's countless examples of that in our program, and it's important for me that our younger players see that and understand that, hear that from our older guys. And I think that makes a better person in the long run. They got to work for something. It's not going to be easy. There's going to be adversity.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot of hard work. It's not going to happen right away. I think there's value in that, but you have to get them to understand that and see that in light of what's going on in the world of college football nowadays. When things aren't going well, guys bolt. If they're the backup, they're gone. If there's somebody going to pay them more money, they leave. And so it starts to value in this place and what this program is all about and the brotherhood. And it kind of goes from there.
Yeah, and there's a lot of value to that. By the way, people that run for the rest of their lives. And my dad, my dad told me, it was funny, somebody asked me what's one of the greatest things I've ever learned. And I said I could go back to being 7 years old. I was on a basketball team, and the coach wasn't putting me out there. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I think I'm doing some good things. I could be better here in practice. I could be better there. But, I thought I earned the right this time, or I thought I earned the right that time. And, I walks in one day to my parents' room, and I told my dad, I said, I'm going to quit. I'm going to quit the team. And he didn't say anything. And I said, Dad, did you hear me? I told you I'm going to quit. And he was reading the newspaper. And he said, no. I said, what do you mean no? It's my life. I don't want to be on the team. You're not on the team. The coach isn't playing me. I don't want to play. And he said, Daniel, no. And I said, why? And he said, if I allow you to quit today, you will quit for the rest of your life. And now at 40 years old, saying that Q word makes me literally sick to my stomach. I don't even like saying the word. And so, I mean, I look back to that and to what we're talking about of if you don't have the starting job, why would you not work for it? Why would you not attack it? Why would that not make you go harder? I think the best people in life are the people that were told, I mean, think about it. Do you know any success stories, Brian, your own included, where someone at some point in your path told you, you can't be a head coach, you're not going to be successful. You're not going to be able to do this. You can't lead the academy. You're not going to be able to develop these guys. You're not going to win 10 games. I mean, somebody at some point somewhere told you, Brian Newberry, you couldn't, and you responded with, okay, watch. And I think that that's what everybody needs, is when adversity strikes, you stand tall, you stand firm, you stand up. You don't run from it, because if you run from the storm, well, storms happen all the time. You're going to be running forever.
Right. All right. You're going to stay in the storm a little longer if you run away from it, right?
Yeah.
It's going to follow you. No, that's a great point, and great lesson to learn, for these young people. But I think adversity, reveals. It doesn't just build character; it reveals character. And I think that our guys may not always appreciate it in the moment, but I think having honest, hard conversations with your players, making sure that you're transparent about exactly where they're at in the program, what they need to do to get better, and all those things help with all those things, and the value of that and the process. And we got special young men here, and I think maybe as a whole a little bit more mature, for their age than a lot of others, and so they see the value in that. Not to say that we don't have to help them see the value in that as well, but those are lessons you have to learn, as a young man, that ultimately, like in your case, make you better, right? And teach us a lot about who we are, and that's the beautiful thing about our game. It's not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be ups and downs and adversity, and there's injuries that you fight through. There's you're buried on the depth chart. What are you going to do about it? We talk a lot about Landon and Blake. We talked about Adam Klenk. There's we had 28 seniors, and maybe half of those seniors didn't play a lot of football snaps for us this year, but all of them have tremendous value, in our program. Whether that's being a great teammate, being a phenomenal down on the look team, and showing our guys what we need to see during the week, or just being great backups in their role, waiting for their opportunity. But I think that's important that our guys all understand that there's a place for all of us, and unfortunately, only 11 guys can play at a time, and you'd love to play everybody because they all deserve it, in the way that they work and all that. But they understand it, and at the end of the day, right, what they're getting when they leave this place is pretty phenomenal, whether they step foot on the field or not. And that's important that our guys understand that, as well.
Yeah, Brian Newberry coming to us here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside the Great Lakes Honda City Studios. Navy Midshipmen Head Football Coach inside the 2025-26 postseason. Final note before you and I put each other on the hot seat in some rapid fire. Two-part question, has to do with bowl season. I believe that Navy historically has a 3-3 record with Cincinnati, and you used to be obviously in the same conference in the American, so the opportunity to play in the AutoZone Liberty Bowl against Cincinnati, just what you can say to play a familiar-ish opponent. Obviously, they have a different coach now. They're in a different conference, but to, be able to break the tie, so to speak, of the 3-3 record. And then secondly, your overall take on institutions opting out of bowl games. And just, to me, I feel like you value this. You value the opportunity. So I'd love to get your thoughts on playing Cincinnati and kind of the irony of getting to see them again. And then secondly, when you see teams across the country say, don't call us, we're not playing.
Yeah, well, it's first of all, Liberty Bowl is a great bowl. I think the seventh oldest bowl in the bowl series. And we played there in 19, got to play Kansas State and won a close game there. But it was a very well-run bowl game. It was very well organized. A lot of things for the families to do. It was a first-class bowl, so I'm excited to get back. Excited to play a team like Cincinnati. From the Big 12, we get to play a Power 4 team, which our kids get excited about being able to do. And I think 3 of those losses, I think I was here for, at least 2, right? And we played them early on in my career here. They were kind of the class of our league. I remember playing them at home when they were a top 5 team in the country. I think we lost 27-17. Played them pretty well, but I think Coach Satterfield has done a great job with that team. I know they've got a couple opt-outs. The quarterback's not playing. The O-line is playing on there. They're really, really good. So they're a really talented football team. The 2 quarterbacks back in backing the starter up are both really good quarterbacks, talented quarterbacks. So it's going to be a huge challenge for us, but excited about that challenge.
Yeah.
Looking forward to getting down to Memphis. We head down on the 29th, and so we'll get 4 practices in before we play that game on the 2nd. In regards to the other question of folks opting out of bowls, it's interesting, and I can't speak to the teams that make that decision, why those decisions are made. And I think a lot of it has to do with, you look at Notre Dame, for example, I'm not sure why they made that decision. I think it was probably the players, potentially. If the players don't see value in going to play in a bowl game, it's hard as a coach to get excited to go do that. So I think it's interesting. There's a lot of layers to it. I think it's something that we've created, with the playoff, and then talking about expanding the playoff. And so, unfortunately, I don't know where that leaves these bowl games. Moving on in the future, I really don't. But there's certainly value in playing them. It's a reward to play in a bowl game, extra opportunity to play another game for your players to continue to develop them. So, I don't have the answer for you on that one, Dan. It's unique. It's different. I know that any chance we get to play in a bowl game, we're always going to do that. But I can't speak to the reason why other schools made that decision. It's disappointing because bowl games, used to be a really, really big deal. And unfortunately, it's not as much the case nowadays. I think a lot of the teams look at it as college football playoff or bust. And there's the top echelon bowls that are good bowls. But yeah, it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, moving forward.
Yeah. And there's 84 teams that I believe get taken. There's 72 plus the 12 in the college football playoff. So a lot of opportunities, a lot more opportunities than really any other level and any other sport when you see 84 of 136 get to play in the postseason. Brian, you've been great about answering my questions. As always, let's play some rapid fire. Let's have some fun with it. So you get to ask me the first question.
Oh, boy. So I know you just had a big trip to Italy. That was pretty outstanding. So my wife and I are planning to take a trip there this summer. It's our 10th anniversary, her 40th birthday. She probably wouldn't want me to say that on air, but one recommendation, right? If you went back, so something that we can't not see when we go on that trip, what would it be?
That's there's so many. So I'd say the Galleria Borghese in Rome. You definitely have to go see that. There's actually within that area, there's this fantastic shop that has leather jackets, like genuine Italian leather, and it's like a fourth of the price that you'd pay in New York City. And so I got a really cool jacket there, and I feel like I know your style a little bit, Brian. So I feel like I'd send you over there to go get yourself a nice leather jacket. They have men's and women's, so bring you and the wife, and I would say go to the Galleria for sure, because people talk about the Vatican, which is beautiful and it's amazing, but the Galleria Borghese, I don't even know. When you look at the art, it makes you stop and say, how are people this talented? Then when you think about how long ago it was made, it was like, how did these people even have the ability to do this? So it's insane. I mean, they have these statues, and there's like a woman laying on a bed, and she's like turned towards you, and they have the creases in it. And it's like, how did somebody crease this solid the way that they did? And just every intricate piece of how somebody would actually look, and every element of everything, like a wrinkle here, showing a muscle a certain way there. They have David when he's pulling back the slingshot, getting ready to fire it at Goliath. And I mean, when you think about when these were made, it even makes you go even more into appreciation of the creators, of the artists, to say, how did you do this? And how did you do this back then? When, obviously there's no machines to help them. There's no AI. There's no, way to, essentially make things look better or to change something if they need an intricate, shift in whatever they were doing. I mean, this is all them. This is all their talent. So I would say go there. And then I would say you have to go to Napoli. You have to get pizza in the birthplace of pizza. And I will tell you this, Brian, I ate pizza pretty much every single day. I walked everywhere. I was more toned arguably than I've ever been because their food doesn't have all this garbage in it that America sometimes puts in it. So I will say if you eat pizza and you walk around a lot, you will come home in some of the best shape of your life. So,
All right, awesome. I'll put that in my notes.
my question back to you is if your team described you as a dish, as food, how do you feel the midshipmen would describe Brian Newberry? What meal would they pick to describe you?
Oh, that's a crazy question, Dan. That's a really hard one. I think you get a lot of different answers on that probably. Um, Food that's maybe kind of rare. I don't know what that would be. It's a maybe a really specific taste that you can appreciate. Maybe I don't know. I don't know what that would be. But that's a good question. I would think more on that. Maybe next time I'll give you a better answer.
Well, let me say this to you. If you had a restaurant that were to name something to Brian Newberry, what would be on the dish? Like if you got to pick.
Yeah, some kind of sandwich, I would think,
Okay.
or a burger that maybe doesn't have some things on it that might not typically be on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What's your next question for me?
Next question for you. Um, what game are you most looking forward to in this playoff? And I know some of it hadn't happened yet, and you don't know where the brackets are going to go and all that stuff. But is there a certain matchup this next weekend that you're really intrigued about?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch, and I feel very blessed to cover bowl season and the college football playoff for many years, getting to cover the postseason, and I'll be at the national championship. I'll be at a bunch of the bowl games: Cotton Bowl, the Orange Bowl, the Peach Bowl, and I would say if I had to pick a matchup that's coming up that I know is going to happen, I would definitely say it's my dark horse. It's Miami. It's Miami playing Ohio State. It's the history of that. It's people expecting Ohio State to win handily or easily, and I think Miami's got a big chip on their shoulder. I think they didn't need the help of everybody saying Notre Dame should have been in, except outside of them they should have put in Notre Dame and all this back and forth. So I think you gave Mario Cristobal and the Hurricanes even more of a reason to let you know what they're all about. So I would say do not sleep on Miami, and I will be at that game, and I'm excited to see what's going to happen in that one.
Gotcha. Yeah.
My question back to you, if you could play me in a video game of any time period, any game you've ever played, Nintendo, Sega Genesis, something on your phone, whatever, if you played me in a video game, what game would you want to face off with me in?
Pac-Man.
Okay.
Yeah. I just got a refresher in that. We took the family down to Deep Creek in the western part of the state, stayed in a cabin there, Airbnb, and they had the old school arcade Pac-Man game down in the basement. My son and I played quite a bit, and brought back memories of my dad and I playing when I was a kid on the Atari, if you remember that.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd play until I beat his high score, and he'd come home that evening, play till he beat mine, and so my son and I had kind of a little similar competition, and I'm pretty good at that game.
Well, I'll tell you, Pac-Man's one of the ones I'm not that good at, so you probably beat me
I
on
picked
that
the good one then. There you go.
What's your last question for me, Mr. Newberry?
Same question back to you.
Oh, what game are we playing?
Yeah.
Okay, let me think. So, I think I could get you. I'm good at Mortal Kombat. I'm really good when I'm Scorpion in Mortal Kombat. I think I could get you in that.
Yeah, you probably could because I don't even know who Scorpion is. I played it; it's been a long time. But yeah,
Yeah.
fighting games are good ones.
On Sega Genesis, it was back B, and he would just send out this thing, and so I do back B, and people get so mad at me. They're like, "You don't have any other move?" I'm like, "Stop being mad that I win." So,
yeah.
I
tell you what game I was pretty good at. Do you remember I think it was called Karate Fight or something like that? Arcade game.
What was that? Oh, it was an arcade game. Okay.
Yeah. Maybe that doesn't sound right, but it was karate, but you maybe remember the moves with the joystick that you'd make to do certain kicks and flips and stuff like that. I was pretty good at that one too. But Mortal Kombat, you would definitely get me.
Yeah, I'm good at the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game that had a joystick and A and B, and I'm good at the X-Men game that also had that. So
Okay.
let's say that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. When I think back about video games, I go all the way back to the Commodore 64, and games you used to be able to play on that, which is way back.
Yeah, I go back to Nintendo, Super Nintendo, or like original Nintendo, playing Chip and
Sure.
Dale Rescue Rangers, which is one of the best games. And I finally found it, looking for it for over a decade. I finally found it.
Nice.
My last
Nice.
question for you, Brian. If you and I could do a destination interview, where would you send us to do our next interview and why?
Destination interview. I have to stick with somewhere that I've been. I would say Glacier Park in
Okay.
Montana. I think you got an appreciation for nature and the mountains and hiking and doing all that kind of stuff. If you've never been there, it's a pretty magnificent place.
All right, Glacier Park. We'll
Yeah,
look into that one. I definitely like nature and I appreciate it. Brian
yeah.
Newberry getting set for the AutoZone Liberty Bowl. Cincinnati coming up here. And obviously, talking bigger picture about the Naval Academy and college football and collegiate athletics with the Navy Midshipmen Head Football Coach inside the Great Lakes Honda City Studios here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Brian, as always, it is my absolute pleasure and my honor, more than anything else, to have your friendship and to just have the bond that we built over the years really means a lot.
Yeah. Feelings mutual. Thanks, bro.
Thank you, sir.